Good morning to all of you, and a very, very warm welcome to the TDRA live session virtual academy. It is my pleasure and my privilege to be here, and I'm super, super happy to be presenting this session on delivery management to all of you. I would like to start with thanking the TDRA Virtual Academy for inviting me here again. It's always a pleasure to be with the Academy. And I do really hope that you will find this session a useful and a gainful one. So, before we start today, I have a few house rules that we would like to observe, and that is only one house rule, which is please do keep the comments in the section below respectful. All questions are open at the end of the session, and I will be answering them once I'm through with the slides. Also, if you have any queries after, that will also be entertained by messages. So please do keep glued on till the end of the session today. Now, I'm sure, and I'm assuming rather, that a lot of you over here are probably, seasoned product thinkers, owners, maybe newbies, maybe engineers, UX, all the whole lot that we expect, stakeholders maybe, you know. So I'm trying to create over here a commonsensical baseline of understanding, which is jargon free and which is in layman terms, understand only in half an hour session, so we would like to keep it as brief, as to the point, and succinct as possible. And with that, I'd like to welcome you all over again. A little bit about myself before we start the session. I am Smita Gaurav. I'm a coach, consultant, and trainer to very many organizations in the UAE and in other countries as well. I have been in this field for the last 20 years now, and it's my privilege to be with the TDRA. I am a CTI coach consultant. I'm also a CAP specialist in a CPCD and a budding occupational therapist. I own the Unlimited company. I'm the co-founder of that. And I'm really, really happy to be here with all of you. I look forward to having a great learning transferring session with all of you. Let's start, please. So today what we will be doing is the table of contents is right here in front of you. We are doing the basics of delivery management. So we're not really going deep into the technicalities of it. We are skimming the surface of all the primarily important models and concepts that we need to understand. So the basics of delivery management, plan-driven and value-driven delivery, agile delivery managements, empowering high performance and successful delivery. These will be the quick run through that we will be doing today, and hopefully in future we will have more in-depth sessions on that as well. So welcome again. So when we start, let's start by asking what is delivery management and why is it so important to us and why are we talking about it? So when we talk about delivery management, the two elements or the two people who are primarily involved in the entire process are the product manager and the team manager. Okay. And the link between these two effectively becomes a delivery management process. So what this actually does is that the project manager places certain formal requests on accepting, executing, and the delivery of product. And this is actually called a work package. So the delivery team manager accepts a work package, executes a work package, and delivers a work package in the controlling a stage phase. Now, the purpose over here, of course, is to have a set of requirements that everybody can be agreeing upon. And the work on the products is allocated to the team as authorized and agreed upon. So the entire team understands the time, effort, and the cost which is actually involved in completing the task. And therefore, the task is expected to be completed within tolerance, to the expectations and within tolerance. And accurate progress information is given to the product manager as the process is completed. This is a very simplistic and a very, very easy understanding of delivery management as we understand it. So, and this work package goes into reviews after it is completed. So this delivery management, if essentially, becomes a very, very important stage of the entire process. Why is that? Why do you think the delivery management has been picked out as one of the most important stages? So when we talk about the various stages, which is to authorize and assign to the team as the requirements agreed upon, or to the accurate progress information, or to expect the time, cost, and effort, or any of these different elements, they actually go into creating the final stages of delivery. And in the delivery stage, what we find is becoming very useful to the end product is the fact that the customer feedback is available to us. The customer feedback is available to us, and there's a minimum viable product validation that happens over here. So the purpose of any delivery is actually to create and to finalize or to crystallize the minimum viable product. This happens over here. Also, if any changes are needed, the pivoting also happens over here. What do we understand by the pivoting? Is the ability to switch from one paradigm to the other, to be agile in the way we are handling the entire process, and to be able to move from one assumption to another, from one hypothesis to another, from one processes to another. So this pivoting happens over here. And the final validation from the customer also comes over here. All the metrics and the analytics are used in the delivery aspect. So this is actually a very, very vitally important stage of the entire product management as we understand it. So just to summarize, what have we understood? We have understood that the delivery management constitutes of an interaction between the product manager or the product owner, which is not the same thing, but sometimes they are, and the team manager. And between them is an agreement for the requirements that they are going to be working upon, accepting a work package, executing a work package, and delivering the work package. This is what the delivery management is all about in a short nutshell sort of a way. Let us now understand that this is now also very important because we tend to evaluate the customer value that it holds, the business value that it holds, and the feedback that it is getting from the actual traction with the customer or the user in this case. And the pivoting also happens over here. So that is the big why of delivery management. Okay, let us now understand this a little more deeply. We understand that there are two kinds of deliveries that we have. One is the plan-based delivery and one is the value-based delivery. Now, the plan-based delivery came a little while back and it was the norm for quite a while, but now it is being gradually done away with. So what happens in the plan-based delivery is this, that the business team gives a bunch of requirements after finalizing the same to the software team for analyzing. The software team, after analyzing the same requirements, goes into the design phase, and the develop phase, and then the test phase, and then finally the release phase. Now, the major drawback with this entire plan-driven delivery system, or the waterfall system as we call it, is the fact that we have all the requirements in the very outset, but those requirements have not been checked in between as a release to the customer and to see if there's a feedback loop available or not. So in that case, it becomes a very rigid process because all the requirements are given at the outset and then they are followed through with the precision, but there is no feedback loop available. Because of that, also there's low customer focus. Because there's low customer focus, therefore there's no feedback loop. And because there's no low customer focus, there is no visibility to the end customer or to the user as to what is happening during the plan part. So this is actually a little bit of a time-taking affair. It's also very, very wasteful in terms of the manpower that is used. It is not collaborative. It is more a contract that has been negotiated in the very beginning and it is now being followed through. But there is not a collaborative element with the customers. So the very fact that there is no focus about the customer means that the process and the tools become the gods over here, so to speak. Yeah. And then we come down to the value-driven one. So just going back to this, the plan-driven one is also called the waterfall method, as I mentioned earlier, where requirements, design, implementation, testing, and maintenance happen one after the other in a linear fashion. There's a linearity of progression in this case that is not going to be carried out to the value-driven. Let us now switch to the value-driven delivery. The value-driven delivery are different in very many aspects. And the differentiation starts in the very beginning because the requirements are not all given at the outset. Very few requirements are being started with, and these requirements are being picked up on the expected value of the entire of the requirements. What kind of a business value will it actually provide to the customer or to the user? This requirement is therefore then further broken down into iterations by the software team. And the iterations happen in small sets. So only a few of the requirements or the items are taken in, and then they are iterated, they are developed, designed, and then they are released. This release time is typically less than a month. So in that case, what happens is that the very little time passes between the actual requirements being given and the release date. It may not be released to the customer or the user, but it is released. So there is a chance to get a feedback upon what is already being done. So we are microing down the entire task into smaller bits and seeing how the feedback loops are created and what value is being added over there. After that, this phase is again tried out with the next set of requirements, and the second iteration is done. And, and then the team starts building upon the previous one incrementally. So now what has happened that incremental changes are happening after a feedback loop is given, and the customer is definitely in the picture. So there's a high visibility for the customer. It's a very flexible process. It's not rigid per se. Yeah. And it is also value centered because after every increment, it is gauged for the kind of business value it is providing to the customer and to the end user. And finally, it has got a high customer focus. So it is a very collaborative, inclusive process that helps us in understanding how we can create a product without actually executing too much of time and manpower, but also getting good value for whatever effort is being given. This value driven is also called the agile system. We will discuss that in a little detail in the further slides. Let's recap once again. So we have the plan driven and the value driven delivery. The plan driven delivery is not flexible, it is rigid. All the requirements are given in the very beginning. It has got low customer focus, and the customer does not have an insight into the process of design development at all. And therefore, the end result may be very far away from the customer's expectations or the end user's expectations. Whereas in the value based delivery or the value driven delivery, the requirements are given in a very short set and they are based upon the value that is actually going to be provided to the business. So the minimum viable product has to be one of the first stages over here. And then the software teams break into iterations. These iterations typically last a month and a less. And then the first iterations are then given as a release. And then there's a feedback collected on that, either from the customers or not. And then the second iterations are further gone into. So I hope so far it is clear as to what it is. So right now we have covered what exactly is delivery management, why is it important, why is that stage of delivery management the most important one, and then we have discussed what are plan-driven and value-driven delivery methods. As we now understand, plan-driven delivery methods are also called waterfall methods, and the value-driven delivery methods are also called the agile ones. Agile, Scrum, Kanban, all of these are highly touted words, and we've been hearing a lot about them. And let us now deep dive and understand what they are all about. Yeah. So before we go into that, we would also like to say that the plan-driven deliveries are actually the deliveries that have an output, but that does not have a necessary impact on the customers at all, or very little. Whereas the outcome that is expected from the value-based deliveries has a definitive value for the target group that we are looking at, or for the customers, or for the users. These are vitally important things to understand before we start out any kind of a methodology exploration. And before we do that, it's good to understand that one methodology or two methodologies are not accurate for everywhere. It could vary, and there's no one set method which is absolutely correct or absolutely wrong. In the later slides, we will discuss as to what are the variables and what are the caveats in using the methodologies. So before we understand agile delivery in depth, let's understand what it actually means in a brief, understandable manner. So what the agile delivery does, it focuses on the achievement of the highest value in time in the most efficient manner. So achievement of highest value along with the efficiency of the process are both the governing principles of it. When did the agile delivery come in? The agile manifesto actually came in 2001. Okay. And if we see here, the core values of agile manifesto are actually right the opposite of the waterfall system as we understood it. So the Agile Manifesto held individuals and interactions over processes and tools. And this is one of the derailers of Agile as well, because individuals and interactions are not steadily and consistently prioritized over processes and tools. The second core value of Agile was the fact that working software was prioritized over comprehensive documentation. So, accuracy was highly important. The third bit was this, that the customer collaboration is more important than customer negotiation or contract negotiation. So, a collaborative approach to customers is more important than what we have previously decided in the very beginning. We assume that the customer's requirement will be changing, the stakeholders might be given different requirements, and we have to factor in that. And there is a lot of room for changes and for some sort of a flexibility in what we are using as requirements from them. Finally, responding to change over following of plan. Just as I said earlier, any kind of change is expected. Actually, it's also welcome and it's necessary so that it can be incorporated in the processes and we can move further ahead with a new understanding of what the stakeholders or the customers are wanting. So the job of the product owner over here is to anticipate what the stakeholders are wanting or take the requirements from them and pass it on to the teams, the design, the development teams and various, and sort of create a funnel for them as to which is the most prioritized one, which has the most maximum value, and give them those requirements in forms of stories. So we do not talk about tasks over here because tasks are not motivation, they lack the human element. As individuals and interactions are highly prioritized, therefore they become stories. And the stories has a one major aspect that the stories are always asking the question, why is this being done? What is the motive behind it? Who is the customer? So instead of just given a mechanical task to complete, it becomes a whole idea, a whole understanding about what the task actually means, what are the ramifications of it, and that is shared by the entire team. So now we understand that collaboration, customer focus, value based prioritization, and iterative development or incremental additions to the product are highly important in Agile. What actually makes Agile effective is the fact that their teams are very tight and small, and therefore the collaboration is not a challenge. It also means that the iterations are faster, and the customer feedbacks also are faster than what we normally would expect them to be. Users and end customers are engaged in the refining of the end product requirements. This is actually the winner of the entire agile system, that the end product is exactly what the customer had wanted or anticipated or has high business value for them. So these are the things that actually makes an agile methodology highly desirable. And so, therefore, the natural comparison over here is this, that agile versus waterfall, agiles are always better to use because they have more room and more scope for changes, for pivoting, for expectations of any uncertainty. Whereas waterfall are linear and they are strict and they are a little rigid and they are not inclusive in the way they look at the requirements of the customers, or they're not anticipatory in the way they look at the customer requirements. So this is a natural comparison that we have, which is between waterfall and agile. So now we have understood that plan-based delivery and value-based delivery can be categorized as waterfall, which is plan-based delivery, and agile, which is value-based delivery. Value-based deliveries or agile deliveries are more inclusive, they are more agile, they are open to more changes, They provide greater value in a shorter amount of time. They have a good accuracy with respect to customer expectations, and the feedback loop is continuously maintained. And all of these elements, likewise, are not present in the waterfall system. And therefore, it becomes a little difficult to work with in the long run. I hope so far it is simple and explanatory to all of you as to what the difference is between agile and waterfall systems. Yeah. So the study that has found that has been widely talked about is this, that happiness in organizations while working with agile is higher. Of course, this comes with a caveat because a lot of organization structures and cultures do not permit agile to be fully agile, and that is something that we will discuss later. But in general, waterfall projects are not as fulfilling emotionally as our agile projects. And that's a bit of an interesting study on this, which has a human element, and I thought to share it with all of you. So the agile umbrella has got a number of delivery methodologies under it, and we have time today to discuss the two most important ones, which is the Scrum and the Kanban. So the Scrum, or the batch as we understand it, or the Kanban, or the continuous development as we understand it, are the two parts that we will be discussing as against the waterfall. Okay. So then we have also DSTM, Crystal, XP, Lean, and FTD. But right now in this short session, we will only be discussing these two because these two are the most used and the most hyped. So it's important right now to have a quick comparison about what Scrum and Kanban and compare with waterfall. And we can do this with a very small and a quick example. And I would urge you to look at this diagram and look at these elements in the black dots as items that have been to be worked upon. And let us suppose that a design team is working with these items. And these items, after they have been worked by the design team, they are now going green, and now they are being given to the developer. Sorry, that's waterfall. That's not Scrum down, so we are still with waterfall. So the developer takes this up, and then further again, it passes it on to the testing team. Now what is happening is that the design team has no coordination with the testing team, and the testing team has no understanding of what the developer team has done, and most likely the customer is not involved anywhere. As opposed to this, let us now look at the design, developer testing, and the customer interaction during the Scrum. Scrum, or the batch, is actually worked in batches. So let us suppose the three items that we have worked upon have gone green, or they have gone okay by the design team. Then the design team cascades this down to the developer team. And then the developer team further cascades this down to the testing team. This is now passed on as a release to the customer or to the end user, or maybe not. And a feedback loop is developed from there. And then we go back to the design stage if need be. At the same time, the next batch is now again being iterated upon, and then incrementally it's being added upon. So the time taken for the first is shorter to reach the customer or for the release. It also means that there's a feedback loop continuous. It also means that there's less of manpower wastage and time wastage. Okay. So this is the Scrum that we're talking about, that takes things in batches and passes it on. We now go to Kanban, which is actually the nirvana that everybody talks about. The Kanban becomes even more granular. In that, what I mean by saying is that even smaller elements or smaller items are taken, and each of them are gradually developed and then passed on to the next team for developing, testing, and then release. So when this is being done, the incremental part of the work gets very, very highlighted. So every single task that we are doing is incremental, and it's actually very, very important to add small incremental changes, and that is what ensures quality and accuracy for the end customer. So this is the three differentiation between waterfall, Scrum, and Kanban. I hope it has been simply explained to you. It's a more complex process, of course. The Kanban board, we can go into that, or we can go into the Scrum understanding of scripting and why it is so central to the Scrum and what it means to have, artifacts. And we have numerous terminologies about it. But right now, in simple, in short, this is what we can explain to you. So this is how the Kanban works. And then you see the final, the caveat or the dependencies for Scrum and Kanban are these. That Kanban is best used for autonomous teams. Okay, so the teams which are highly autonomous and can work on their own are best utilizing Kanban. Scrum, however, needs some amount of organizational and structural changes. Okay, we need less of gated structures. We need less of silos, less of blockages in between departments, so as to help us out. And also, Kanban might not work with highly opinionated stakeholders. So if you have a stakeholder or a customer who would like to have a say, everywhere, that will not be useful because the autonomy of the Kanban team is very important. So the Kanban team works best when they have been left with a lot of autonomous powers to be able to carry this out with precision and ruthlessness. So this is the basic understanding and the basic differentiation and also the underlying baseline which is required for Scrum and Kanban. So what have we learned today? We have learned that Waterfall, Scrum and Kanban are three types of methodologies. Scrum and Kanban are the agile ones. Waterfall is the non-agile or the plan-based one. Scrum and Kanban both work in batches, Scrum in bigger batches and Kanban in singular ones. Though both need different organizational structures and team structures to be more and more effective. So that is what we have done. Of course, before understanding any of this, we have to take into account how much time does the product take to reach the customer, how does a value get realized, and then what is the feedback loop, and when do we learn, when do we pivot, what is the organizational structure like. These are the various frameworks within which these can be actually explored, right? So that is that. Now we come to empowering high performance teams. Now, high performance teams are actually the safe team environment which individuals and where individual accountability and team accountability is very high, and leading by example is even more important. So psychological safety and a blame-free culture are critical for high performance. Cultivating curiosity and psychological flexibility is very important over here. The gift of mistake and allowing of mistakes and growth mindset is important. Practicing healthy vulnerability is also very important. Individual accountability and team accountability. Cultures where teams hold themselves accountable for work works best. Yeah. And the delivery manager or the product manager's role is to become a role model in this case, not to drive performance, but to inspire performance. Successful deliveries. Successful deliveries, of course, constitute of very many things. They are always prioritizing outcomes over outputs. Yeah. And then the incremental value delivery that we just discussed in Kanban and in Scrum is vitally important, where small incremental changes make up a great product. And optimizing the whole. The common pitfall of focusing on single projects or single department budgets is implementation of locally optimized solutions that do not achieve a success for the whole organization. With this, we come to a close for the program. I would now like to have all questions, please. Your questions are most welcome. I'll be happy to answer any of them. Please do let me know. So one of the questions that I always get is that the product manager and the product owner the same thing? This is a little outside of the delivery management, but no, that's not the case. Sometimes they are similar and sometimes they are not. According to Marty Kagan, who's one of the leading writers and researchers and practitioners of Scrum and agile methodologies, a product owner is often just an administrative role which has got very few understanding of what the actual product management is all about or delivery management is all about. Yeah. The second question that I also often get from a lot of people is the fact that is Scrum actually a viable thing to do? But yes, Scrum is viable, and definitely an agile system is very useful to us. But it all depends upon the organizational structure. And organizational structure which are not open to changes might have difficulty adopting agile methodologies as a whole. So it always has to be seen in that framework, and the context of the organizational culture is very important over here. We cannot stress that enough. Also, A lot of teams, even if they are within organizational cultures, they do not adapt to the agile psychology. So the agile systems or the processes work best when the teams are actually psychologically agile. And therefore, the behaviors over here will drive the output. It is not alone just to have the process as an understanding as a cognitive process. The behavioral processes behind it of the team drives the ultimate output and the success of the product on the whole. We also understand that a lot of people have queries about, yeah, so we have certain queries coming in. Fantastic. Okay. So, what are the barriers to Scrum? Okay, like I said, the barriers to Scrum are this, that we cannot have too many silos or organizational barriers or team barriers in between or any gatekeeping. There needs to be an open flow of information and a smooth, cascading of tasks as we or stories as we know it, so that the work gets effectively done. Okay. Uh, okay, one more question. What's a sprint? Okay, fantastic. So when the requirements are being given to the teams, they are being boxed into 3 or 4 or 5 elements which are most required or requirements which are most required, and these go into sprints of a week long. So the team is given these 3 tasks to be finished in a week, and that is what we call a sprint. So there could be multiple sprints to be completed, and that how soon the sprint gets completed is called the velocity. Yeah, yeah. So these are some of the questions that we have. Of course, okay, okay. Is plan-based methodology still on? Yes, plan-based. Some organization still use it where they have already tried and tested something before, and the user interface or the customer feedback is not as important. Then yes, it can go, but largely a lot of the developments are agile, and they are preferred in such a way these days. So that's the second part of it. Okay, any other questions? Right, thank you so much for your time. I would like to thank the TDRE Virtual Academy once again for the support and for inviting me once over here. I'm so happy to be presenting to all of you. I hope to see you again. Please do leave your comments in the comments section. We look forward to your interaction with us. It does add a lot of value. Thank you for your time, and bye-bye.